Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Moore. I direct the Google Earth Engine and outreach programs at Google. And I hope that time lapse of the planet was good motivation for the discussion today. Not that any of us need any more motivation. I'm very excited to welcome you, to our speakers, and to all of you to this, what we hope will be kind of a transformational initiative called the Forest Data Partnership. Thank you to USAID for your foresight and support for this initiative, with the goal to bring unprecedented transparency and traceability to global commodity supply chains in order to stop and reverse what we all just saw in that Earth time lapse. We have a packed agenda, so we are co-hosting this with World Resources Institute, our longtime partner, and so I'm going to turn it over to Chip Barber, who will be our MC for today. Chip.
Thanks very much. Can you all hear me? So my name is Chip Barber with the World Resources Institute, and thanks to Google, thanks to USAID, a lot of people to thank. You'll be hearing a lot of that because this is a big partnership, and I'm going to get out of the way and let people speak in a moment. But I wanted to say, we originally were going to do this as a launch. This was the launch event. But then this guy got up on the 2nd and launched a forest plan, Joe Biden, in which this featured as part of the forest plan. So the cat was a bit out of the bag at that point, and we've had a couple chances to talk about this at the FACT Dialogue and other places. So this is a bit more of a celebration and showing off this partnership and how we want to move ahead, because this COP will be over soon and we've got a lot of work to do. So with that, I want to introduce our first very honored guest, Ms. Gillian Caldwell, who is the USAID Agency Climate Change Coordinator, so doing climate change across the agency, as well as a Deputy Assistant Administrator. And as a former AID person, I know that part is super important too. So Gillian, the floor is yours. Oh, we need the mic.
I said good afternoon, and that I wasn't sure whether to scream or cry after watching that time lapse. That was truly sickening, actually. We're really good at messing things up as humans, but we've also got the ingenuity to get it right, you know, and that's what we've got to do, because time is running out, as we're all aware. I was at an event earlier with Secretary Kerry, who you'll know is our lead envoy on climate, working tirelessly to try to get us the strongest deal possible. And he said, well, everything's already been said by this point in COP, but not everybody said it. So rather than repeating what has already been said, I just wanted to say that AID is thrilled to be launching this partnership. You know, we can't do what we try to do, which of course is to ensure that, especially these days, we're driving strong action on climate change without the partnership of the folks in the room and so many others. This Forest Data Partnership is an alliance between us, the World Resources Institute, FAO, NASA, who we'll be hearing from shortly, Unilever, which is actually, as many may be aware, one of the leaders in terms of lots of dimensions of corporate social responsibility, and of course, Google, that brings us the bad news. And lots of other information all day, every day. I mean, Google's phenomenal. So, you know, this matters because, as you'll be aware, commodity-driven deforestation is one of the primary drivers of climate change, and we can either continue to live in a world in which deforestation is contributing to 20% of global emissions, or we can live in a world in which we preserve those forests and they're able to help us resolve and mitigate 30% of the carbon emissions that we're confronting at any given point in time. And the choice is really ours. And we believe that data is going to be central to enabling us to make the right kinds of choices and ensuring the right kind of accountability. And when it comes to deforestation, there's a lot of data involved to get a complete picture. I mean, that's why, you know, Google and NASA and our partners on the ground are critical co-creators in shaping the picture that we want to make sure local communities and governments and companies have. Thankfully, an increasing number of companies are concerned about deforestation in their supply chains, and they need better information to understand what's happening. Just to give you one concrete example as to how this partnership can work, charcoal, of course, drives deforestation, and it's also a primary source of heating in many countries around the world. But the kilns are so small that it's hard to get a sense as to what's happening where. Where's the scope of the problem when it comes to charcoal-driven deforestation? Where do we need to intervene? So it's this kind of partnership that would give us that nuanced understanding of where kilns are surrounded by deforestation, which suggests the necessity for some intervention. And of course, when we're intervening, we need to be thinking about how people who rely on that source of energy are getting other sources of energy, which is another key role for USAID through initiatives like Power Africa, with a goal to electrify Africa and hopefully leapfrog the fossil fuel infrastructure that's killing us all. So really honored to be here, honored to be collaborating with so many fantastic organizations, and look forward to a different kind of Google map in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. That was fantastic, and we're just really glad you're here, and you know, it's a great partnership. I will now go on quickly to someone who needs no introduction to me, Dasgupta, who is the president and CEO of World Resources Institute. He fairly recently, he just took that on, was it in June? But he's not new to NWI. He ran our cities program for 7 years, established our cities program, which is now one of the largest in the world, I think, and we're now beginning to put those things together, looking at the forest and the cities. So Ani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chip. Thank all of you for joining. I mean, 3 days left, so you were almost there, right? Gillian, first of all, thank you. I mean, it seems that this COP, USAID is back, and I couldn't be, right? And I couldn't be happier. Thank you for this partnership. Thank you for launching this. I just want to say a few words about this, what this is from WRI's perspective. You know, in WRI, we have always focused on innovation. Innovation from the beginning. What can this, what Rebecca does, how can that actually help us do things better? Not just look at pictures, but take action, right? So we have things like Global Forest Watch, which looks at forests all over the world at 1 hectare unit. Aquadot, that looks at every water basin in the world. And this few days back, I forget, sometime last week, we launched something called Global Land Carbon and Land Lab. Again, everything of this is with Rebecca and every one of the pieces of it, because she can do that, right? I mean, without that infrastructure, we won't be. But what this infrastructure will allow us to do in the future is look at 10 square meter very soon, every piece of earth, and see not only what is growing inside forest, but outside forest, what kind of plants are there, what kind of agriculture is there, so that we can have a much better understanding of what's happening, what's growing, what's not growing, and how much carbon is in there, because that is the question. Why is this important? It's important to what Gillian said, the future, when we have transactions, so we don't want just forests, we want people to be living there happily, because many, many communities live in and around forests, depend on forests. How do we actually have a world where they can live, but our forest gets protected? You know, that's the world we want. And all the transactions, all the food you eat, how is that food is possible that it doesn't destroy forests? For that to happen, for that world, we need a level of transparency. We need to understand what is happening in the world in a real time, because most forest agreement and contracts are long-term. 10 years, 20 years. So how do we actually do this over time? So that's why this is incredibly important. And the second thing I want to, it's not data. You know, we look at what Rebecca presented and say, oh, it's Google Earth, it's fantastic data. Data itself doesn't do anything. It's actually people, if you empower people, powerful people, communities to actually take action, to do something about it, or hold their own governments or companies accountable. This is what it allows us to do. This is why WRI is partnering with Google and all the organizations that you heard, Unilever, other, so that we have an ecosystem of not only better knowledge, real-time knowledge, but also a series of action that will allow us to get. The last thing I want to say, two things. One is very clear from this COP, is very different. Two things are very different about this COP for me. One is the amount of businesses are here who want to do the right thing and want to participate in the future, participate in the green economy. A lot of them who are in this market want to do the right thing, want to know what is the right thing to do and what are the right kind of markets to participate in. And then second, a huge amount of financial market have committed. I don't know if you heard the announcement, most probably you have. People with huge amount of financial asset, 130 trillion. I don't think I've actually said a sentence that had 130 trillion in it. Have committed to become green assets by turn. Some of this money will flow to places like this. How do we make sure that is flowing with the transparency we need? Last thing I want to say is nothing we do with WRI, and I think Gillian, you said the same thing, is without partnership. We cannot do any of this with a real partnership with USAID, with NGOs like us, but also with the private sector. And this is a fantastic example of what this is. Thank you for being here. And last thing I must say is it allows us also to work with the coolest people in the world. So I'm really grateful. Thank you, Chip.
I believe I'm next.
You don't need any introduction.
I'm back. Thank you, Ani. And, you know, as much as I'm a technology nerd, I agree with Ani's point that, you know, the data alone does not change the world. And we've seen this over and over again. And that's why, as Google, we're very excited about this partnership, because we do believe that technology can help transform massive amounts of complex raw data into actionable insights. This is happening now, but we need all the other actors and stakeholders to then drive that action and drive that impact on the ground. Okay, so I'm going to just do a whirlwind tour on the technology that we believe can be instrumental in supporting this transformational partnership. And it starts with the incredible amount of public, open, free data that's coming from NASA, ESA, now Planet, high-resolution satellite imagery supported through Norway's NICVI program. Massive amounts of this, but it's unmanageable by normal institutions. And so the real innovation that we embarked on about a decade ago as Google was to build the first cloud-powered, basically planetary-scale environmental analytics platform that brought together all of this data off these tapes in these government archives and online into the cloud, co-located with thousands of computers staged to analysis that data at scale. And we called it Google Earth Engine. We launched it about a decade ago at COP26, and we put it in the hands of countries, scientists around the world. And then there was amazing innovation that began to happen because this technology could unlock the value of this treasure trove of, for example, Landsat data, more than 4 decades of Landsat data that had been sitting on tapes in a government vault was now available for unprecedented data mining. Matt Hansen of University of Maryland was the first scientist to do so at scale, on global scale, and he published the first high-resolution map of global forest cover and change. What was groundbreaking about it was it required analyzing almost 700,000 Landsat images. It required 1 million hours of computation, but because we ran it on 10,000 computers in parallel in the Google Cloud, we had the result in 4 days, whereas on a single computer, it would have taken 15 years. That's why this had never been done before. Since then, it's just taken off. We couldn't be more excited about the ecosystem that has sprung up around this platform. Science, operational applications that are driving decision makers. You can see the exponential growth in and all kinds of different environmental and sustainability applications that have been built across forest, land cover, water, fisheries, and so on. And I mentioned that it's not just about the science. The power of the cloud is that once the scientists have developed these groundbreaking, innovative algorithms and models, it's not difficult to put that in the hands of the decision makers, the policy makers, the practitioners on the ground, because it's all there in the cloud ready for them with their data coming in every day. And so the first really great example of that was the collaboration with World Resources Institute to take the Hansen data and kind of bring it alive in Global Forest Watch. U.S. Forest Service, Unilever, many institutions are now beginning or are using Earth Engine in this way. We'll say, obviously, a little more about Unilever. The other thing that is really important when you talk about transparency and traceability is we can't be operating on maps and data sets that are 5 years old or 1 year old. We need information that's happening now on the ground in order to manage what's taking place. And so Earth Engine is continually streaming every day all of this data from hundreds of different sensors and data sets around the world in near real time. An example of how this actually brings value and not just depression to ordinary people is, or maybe this is a bit depressing, sorry, this is about wildfires in California where I'm from. But what we're seeing here, the visualizations may be hard to see, but the NASA GOES satellite is collecting optical imagery every 15 minutes. So that's the smoke that you're seeing from fires in California, but also thermal pixels, what we call hot pixels. And through Google Earth Engine and AI, we are then detecting and updating every 15 minutes the boundary of that wildfire as it's changing. And then we're publishing that through Google Search and Google Maps and putting it into the hands of more than 1 billion people. That's actually a screenshot from my phone because I was one of the people evacuated from the Santa Cruz Mountains from the CZU fire. I was glad to have the updating map. Now, I know we're here to talk about land cover and commodities and so on. This is a good parallel, which is the Global Fishing Watch project, which Google is powering, and we launched with them about 5 years ago, is bringing unprecedented transparency and traceability to global fishing. Very important to many countries, both inside their exclusive economic zones and also in the global commons of the high seas. Finally, we can make the invisible visible about what's going on with global fishing fleets. This is an example of the ability to track with AIS data from space, from vessel beaming locations, literally the path of vessels. You can then run that, as Global Fishing Watch is doing, through AI, artificial intelligence models, and discriminate, is this a trawler? Is this a longliner? Is this purse seine? And this is important because there are different regulations that govern those different types of fishing. What's very relevant, again, for this discussion is just last Friday, a major announcement of a big grant to Global Fishing Watch to create new technology to create transparency and traceability information for insurers so that they can know the risk associated with different vessels, and then that can lead to whether those vessels are allowed to get insurance. So bringing the power of the market in to guide sustainable operations. So I'm going to end with a little bit on Unilever. We're so excited. We just announced in October the partnership with Unilever. This is in the early stages of bringing this type of transparency and traceability to palm oil supply chain, initially expanding to other commodity crops, cocoa, soy, and so on. And again, this is very early work by the Unilever geospatial team, And the decision they're trying to guide with this data is what palm mill to source from. And with geospatial insights, you can understand where is that mill likely sourcing their palm from. And then where are the smallholder farmers and so on and so on, bringing all these insights in to help guide making those decisions. As part of this, they're also committed to unprecedented transparency of information about, for example, where have there been deforestation alerts from, for example, Global Forest Watch, the first maps of palm plantations, and making that data public, open, and free for civil society, media, and obviously private and public sector to access. So it's an exciting time. I would say the science and technology are there and getting better all the time with new satellites launching, with advances in AI. We will be there to support what's needed. I feel from this COP and talking with WRI and so on, the momentum is there to turn around commodity supply chains and make them more sustainable, but time is not on our side. And so we really need to mobilize, and again, that's why I'm very excited about this partnership. Unilever, Tom, where's Tom? There we go.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I think I'm going to give the comms guys a heart attack and go off script. I've been with Unilever for 22 years, and even when I joined at the very end of the 90s, deforestation was this issue that was always kind of attacking Unilever. Whatever we tried to do, there were always NGOs abseiling down our building dressed as orangutans, and it was really hard to deal with, because you were buying a commodity with a very long, complex value chain, and you could try and write things into supplier agreements and so on, but these are big, complex, fast-moving chains, and it's very hard for people to get a handle on what was happening. And through the 2000s and 2010s, a lot of work done on certification, making certification better, trying to get independent people out there to audit where stuff was coming from, and that felt like progress for a while. But it didn't really stop the problem. You still have, great NGOs saying, yeah, but look what's happening here, or look what's happening there. And we just, you can't put 1 million people into the field to be monitoring every step of the chain all the time. It just doesn't work that way. So, we're all going to hundreds of these panel discussions this week, and a lot of them sound a bit the same, a lot of them sound a bit like ones at previous COPs. I just wanted to be here today and say this is not like all the other things we've been to this week, not like all the other things we've been to at previous COPs. And I think Rebecca had it right at the beginning. This is a transformational game changer for us, and we hope it will be a transformational game changer for the industry. We have real-time commodities moving. Every time you go to the grocery store, the supermarket, you're taking stuff off the shelves. Palm oil is moving through the system, right? And other commodities too. And so what we need is real-time data that allows our sustainable sourcing teams, just as you've seen on the maps there, to go, here's a ping, something's happening that shouldn't be happening. We can pick up the phone. We know which supplier to call. We can express our unhappiness. And let's not get into commercial trading issues here, but we have a certain amount of leverage as a buyer, and this is the system that is going to enable us to do that. And through the work that we're going to do through this partnership, we hope this is obviously not just going to be a Unilever thing, so that wouldn't help anyone, but this is going to be a consistent global data set that anybody in the commodities business can use, single source of truth on the data, and I think you're all smart people. You can see how that's going to become super helpful to allow everybody to take the action they need to take to drive an end to deforestation. So a huge thanks to USAID again for their foresight in sponsoring this work. We do think this is a really big deal. And we're just delighted to be a part of it with all these amazing partners. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't think Eduardo. He's arriving. Okay, Eduardo will be here any minute. Eduardo Mansour. Yes, we are going to go to Gavin Schmidt first, who is with us. We're very pleased to join. Is the chief scientist for NASA. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just have to thank you. I have to thank NASA, and I want to acknowledge we should all cheer for your new baby, Landsat 9, that just launched in September, successfully got first light. Hopefully and is really the landmark Earth-observing mission of all time is Landsat. So that time lapse that you saw, which was depressing, also that was made from Landsat data. And it also has a lot of points of hope in it, by the way, which we didn't show today. Anyway, back to you, Gavin.
Thank you. I had some remarks, but she just gave them. My name is Gavin Schmidt. I'm the NASA senior advisor on climate to the administrator. And as you mentioned, and as you demonstrated very eloquently with the data analytics that you've done, we have been looking in detail at the Earth from space since the 1970s. The Landsat data set goes from 1972 with the first launch, and every subsequent Landsat mission, including Landsat 9, which we just saw the first images from last Friday, actually, is basically a continuous but ever improving data set that we have been investing in with our partners in the other agencies, USGS notably, that we've now been using to say things about what's happening with deforestation, what's happening with land change more generally. Though these same satellites are looking at how mountain glaciers are disappearing, they're looking at how surface water and lakes are changing as water resources are being affected by climate change. And NASA really, we understand our role as a data provider, and we also understand that we can't make the difference on our own. And it's through partnerships with USAID and the Surveyor Network, with USGS, with NOAA, with FEMA, with other international partners, is how we get the practical benefit of the investment that we have made in satellite technology and bringing that data down. It's not quite true that this data was just sitting in a vault before you guys looked at it, but it is, access to data is a very important issue, and it's one that we're tackling as part of NASA's new climate strategy at the highest level. And we're hoping with perhaps some funding from the reconciliation bill, and hopefully with the FY22 budget, we are going to be bringing out more support for climate-related decision-making, using our data, using our trainings, using our understanding of what's happening to the system, and then monitoring it and modeling it and forecasting it at all the different scales. And we've been tremendously happy to be part of this partnership, to be part of the Forest Data Network, the Forest Data Partnership. And we hope that that our data and our contribution can help propel the kinds of positive impacts that I'm sure that you are all working towards. And so partnership is everything. Making the data practically useful is very much what we're trying to do, and we are super happy to be part of that with all of you today and going forward. So thank you very much for this opportunity and this potential to do a better job. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gavin. He's coming soon, so well, I will stall and say one or two things about the actual project. And unless he's here, is he here?
He just wrote he can't come. He's in a ministerial.
So
he asked me to just say something quickly.
Okay, so we have a representative from FAO. Thank you so much for coming. I don't even know your name, so
I'm Amy.
Leading the work on climate change and resilience. And in fact, it's my colleague, Gillian Fox, who was FAO's counterpoint for this effort. So I do know about the effort, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of Eduardo. I think maybe I'll just keep his remarks very short because they're his. But I do want to emphasize that over the past 50 years, FAO has been a major player in providing technical assistance and capacity development related to all aspects of forest monitoring. And, a lot of the things that some of the big positive outcomes of REDD Plus initiatives, in fact, were some of the national forest monitoring that was created across countries, and FAO was really heavily involved in that. The Global Forest Resource Assessment, FRA, is an FAO flagship and core mandate to assess globally within the UN system and on a regular basis forest resources and analyze progress on reforestation and deforestation. And FAO has recently embraced the concept of a digital FAO to create the open access hand-in-hand geospatial platform to provide our member countries, decision makers, and wider audiences with open and transparent data and relevant information related to context. And of course, FAO has a leading role in the United Nations Secretary General's Turning the Tide on Deforestation initiative. And we're also co-leading the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of ecosystems worldwide. So we're excited to combine our expertise with that of our partners under the Forest Data Partnership and help create conditions that enable actors across the spectrum to access consistent, open source, publicly available and validated geospatial data related to forest risk, commodities, and restoration. Thanks so much for having us as part of your consortium.
It was great, and I know what it feels like to step in at the last minute. It's stressful, but you did great, so thank you so much. And I just want to tell one quick story, and then we're going to open it up for any comments there, and Rebecca's going to lead us in that. When we were doing this, and I want to recognize Evan Notman over here at AID, who led us through this process of getting to this point, we told him about this proposed partnership. And you know, one of the things he said was, well, it's pretty impressive. FAO and WRI and Google and Unilever, why do you need us? You know, and I think we've seen this week with the announcements from President Biden and everything else the United States has been doing here, and AID has been doing that. That's what we say, boy, do we ever need you, because this has got to be technology, this has got to be non-governmental, it's got to be intergovernmental, and we need government leadership and also in the aid community. So we're super happy about that. And you know, this is the idea, is to pull the data from the private sector, the public sector, from all the stuff that you've seen, and put it to work on the ground in particular places and areas. And you can read about all the details. Quite frankly, we're going to submit our work plan only, I think, in the end of December. So we are sailing the ship as we are building it, as they say. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. I will do the microphone handling, I guess, the handoff, and she's going to ask around.
Then are you going to use your lapel mic to give people a mic, or we'll invite people up? Or this is very coordinated. Okay. Yeah, so we are open. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Alex. So we're open for questions, comments, challenges, excitement, skepticism. Any questions for any of the speakers, by the way, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I'm Byung-Gian. I'm working for the Korea Forest Service. Actually, I've met the Amy, a couple of years ago when there was the Asian Pacific Forestry Week. Next May 2022, there will be a World Forestry Congress. That event is every 6-year event, and they will be hosted by Korean government and FAO. So we are wishing, this, forest data partnership will be introduced in the World Forestry Congress half a year later, next year. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. So I hope 6 months from now, we'll have some amazing progress already to report, because 6 months in Google time is like, oh, we should have built like 8 products by then. So it's interesting to have these public-private partnerships where we learn to work together. Okay, anything, Chip, you want to add? Anyone?
If there isn't another question, I just wanted to provide some context for AID and our work on climate change. I've made various announcements throughout the course of the week, but you may not have heard them. So just to be clear, USAID sees climate change as one of the very top priorities for the agency. because it touches each and everything we do all over the world. We've got missions in 80 countries and a presence amount of the entire emissions the United States puts out on an annual basis by 2030. We want to restore or preserve 100,000 hectares of land and forests and critical ecosystems. We want to mobilize $150 billion in public and private finance with the resources we have available, and are very much interested in speaking to potential partners, because of course the government can provide critical first loss and risk capital to get the private sector into the game. We want to reach 500 million people around the world with our resilience and support services. And we're going to be focused on mitigating all of our missions around the world, are working to support the NDCs to make sure those really are actualized, and that we collaborate very closely with Indigenous peoples and women and youth and marginalized communities in that context. So partnerships are critical, and this one is going to be critical to our ability to achieve all of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, there's a question over there, or comment, and there's one here.
There you go.
Ah.
Hi. So Catherine Cunningham, and Executive Director of the Nature's Newsroom. So this is actually quite an amazing, naturally intelligent feat that you've pulled together with all these partners. It's quite extraordinary what could actually happen. I can imagine the future.
No pressure, no pressure.
Right. Well, so I have a few questions. One is to the GIS. If you have the Landsat data, what other data are you looking to integrate, like watershed data, or are there other GIS, geospatial layers that can help you identify water security issues, resource issues for people that are living in the forest? That's my first question. That's more a technical question. The second question really goes to the decision support sort of strategy that you have in dealing with different stakeholders, shareholders. I think it's brilliant that you're going to integrate the Indigenous voices or Indigenous people into the conversation, because it always matters who's in the room. And so I'd just be curious to know, what are your thoughts about how to create those conversations and then help them make land use decisions that are going to help them envision, the communities envision what their world could look like.
So I heard two questions, and Chip, I'm happy if you want to jump in maybe on okay. So the first one being, what data sets are we interested in? A lot of different data sets, both from space and from the ground. And local communities, smallholder farmers, they're going to be critical partners on this, because they're collecting, detailed information on the ground about crops and conditions and so on that you can't detect from space, right? And they need to be part of this, right? So this system has got to have to take all of that into account, has to accommodate inputs from all these different stakeholders. And yes, things like watersheds are important, because, for example, I learned that palm fruit only lives something like 4 or 5 hours after it's picked. And so it is a location-based situation where you can judge where feasibly could that palm fruit have come from, right? And so I think, there's going to be a lot of different data sets that are brought in. And then as far as engaging local communities, as I think I said, that's a critical part of this. Does anyone want to add anything else?
Yeah, so just on local communities, I also announced yesterday that USAID just signed on to the principles for locally led development. And, that's really about ensuring that we're not just consulting with local communities, but also that they're leading and have ownership of the solutions that are being generated. So this is important, and it's not always the way the business has been done when it comes to development. We recognize that. Our administrator, Samantha Power, gave a very powerful speech on our 60th birthday just a few days ago about what it's going to take to do business differently as one of the world's largest aid agencies. So, we really look forward to your support and engagement and your continued feedback as to where and how we can do better on that front.
I would just add that on the technology side of engaging local communities, we have a mobile app that is very easy to use and kind of democratizes the ability for anyone to collect local knowledge, traditional knowledge, and contribute that into a larger decision system. The Quilombolas, a Quilombola community in Brazil, has used this to create unprecedentedly detailed maps of their traditional lands, and through that work became part of the Brazilian census, literally got put on the map. So it's a very exciting time in terms of when you can democratize these tools and put them in the hands of everyone, they can count. They can literally be on the map and participate in these kinds of important discussions and plans. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
Hi. Oh, thank you. So this is a question just about two of the streams of thought that came up. Sorry, my name is Amy Van Weinsberg. I'm a professor at the University of Bonn in the ethics of artificial intelligence. And my research study, or my field now, is the sustainability of artificial intelligence. So you can imagine where I'm going, yeah? So on the one hand, we hear that a goal of this project is the mitigation of carbon emissions and the reduction overall of carbon. And we're just starting to learn about the incredible environmental impacts of training, tuning, using artificial intelligence models. You had mentioned 10,000 GPUs over 4 full days. I mean, in my head, I'm thinking about the incredible carbon emissions, and this is just one, right? We also have the mining of precious minerals and so on and so forth. So I'm just wondering, is there a space in the framework for this project where you are looking at proportionality issues, or how do you balance this overall intention to minimize carbon while at the same time contributing to the massive amounts of carbon emissions that we already have? Thank you.
It's a fabulous question, and on the Google side, I'm really proud of our founders at Google, because starting back, I think in 2007, we were the first major company, I believe, to be carbon neutral. Okay, now that involves buying offsets and all this kind of stuff. Then we began really aggressively trying to advance the state of the art of renewable energy, and became the largest purchaser of renewable energy in the world to power our data centers. We've recently made so then we became powering our data centers completely net off renewable energy, and now we've made a commitment that 24/7 we will be completely powered by renewable energy by 2030. This is no one's made so aggressive a commitment, and it's required, because we can't on the one hand be building this technology to save the planet, and on the other hand that technology is destroying the planet. So we, at least at Google, are holding ourselves accountable to those commitments.
Can you convince Amazon, Tesla, Apple, and the other big techs to do the same?
Help us convince them.
Yeah,
Help us convince them.
Okay.
That's your job. Okay.
Hi, I'm Duncan Lang from the Asian Development Bank. I just have a question about potential for modeling. We work with a partner in Australia who's actually been doing modeling on the impacts of, say, a road and what might happen if you built it. So it's not a road that's been built yet, but it's kind of like a road that you could build. And I'm wondering whether that's just one small institution relative to yourselves. So I was thinking, is there scope for you to do something similar, bringing in all these data sets, etc.? Because I think you could do something pretty special there. And, we do a lot of these impact assessments. I'm involved in reading them. USAID is as well. And, we still, things are still going wrong. And so, maybe it's time to start using AI to do the thinking for us, in a sense, to predict what will happen, rather than us trying to predict it and write these reports, which quite often fall short. So thoughts on that? Thank you.
Yeah, if I understand the question, which I think I do, but tell me if I didn't. Detecting roads as they are going in, or being planned even?
Or is it, yeah, I'm kind of thinking about modeling what the impacts might be.
Yeah.
So, for example,
Yeah.
you know, you see those wonderful time-lapse things
Yes.
of, yeah, okay, you got it.
Yeah, so absolutely, and work is being done in that space in a number of different ways, and I'm happy to talk to you about it, you know, offline. But I do think we see often that the road building into a previously pristine area is what starts the cavalcade of, you know, destruction. And so being able to get ahead of that, whether it's, you know, Global Forest Watch with the weekly alerts now from Hansen, you know, we're getting more fresh information when they're going in, but actually even getting ahead of that and being able to predict and model what those outcomes could be. Yeah, I think there's good work going on in that area. And also just, we do want to invite other organizations and scientists, institutions to join this initiative. Like, we're just kind of getting it jump-started here, but we don't have all the answers, right? And so we're opening it up now and getting it started. Other questions? And again, if anybody else wants to say anything? Okay, please.
Thank you indeed for the presentation and for the incredible situation of the forests throughout the world. And because I'm Ala Yusuf from Sudan, I work within the Center for Environmental Studies in Sudan. I do have an experience in observing how deforestation is going on over there, and we're trying to find a grassroots of what is causing the deforestation. My question is going, do you take and concern of what is the grassroots of deforestation? I mean, in Sudan, the conflict is one of the issues that driving very fast the issue of conflict, of deforestation. So we need to address that conflict. What is the reason of conflict? It's a climate change. It's all about competition of a natural resource. And we just were sad to say that in the area like in the savannah, rich savannah zones in Sudan, right now we're observing a rainfall equation and water scarcity. So, I mean, we need to take in concern that while we're collecting data for the forest for deforestation and for reforestation, we need to take another factor that affecting the deforestation process in our way to collecting the data. The second is that we have to address that also poverty is one of the issues that driving the deforestation process, as we have been seeing that people in different areas.
This is going to require balancing human well-being, human livelihood, food security, all of these things with addressing climate change, right? So do you want to say anything about this, or Ani?
No, I think that's, I think I'm wired up. I'm not sure which one I'm talking on, but but they're both working. I think this one sounds better. Okay. You see people who are very, very hungry, and you need to have that bottom-up stuff. So we can do a lot with technology, but we need to be looking at financial flows and financial crime on the one hand, where there's a lot of the problems at the root, and we need to be getting these tools in the hands of people in a bottom-up way on the ground, which sounds good to say, but is not easy to do. I know Google's tried to do this a lot, and we've worked with you. So just, although we really like this technology and we're all working together on it, I think all of us are mindful it's a piece of the puzzle that's critical, but it's not the entire puzzle. And I bet Ani's got something to say on that if you'd like.
First of all, thank you for asking the question. I think from WRI's point of view, we are looking for the system to shift, not to just decarbonize. We want a world that is decarbonized, obviously, but it's good for people and good for nature. And all the work we do is to see how these three outcomes, and people, I mean poorer people specifically, inequality, which has gone higher during last 2 years. So all the work we do is towards that outcome. That's why I said data is a fantastic starting point. It is not the outcome we're looking for. Outcome we're looking for is an outcome that's good for people and good for nature and good for economy. So that's why in WRI, most of our people, we have a pretty large team, are based in these countries. You said you're from Ethiopia, right? Sudan. We have actually a large team in Ethiopia, in Kenya. Because these transitions, I just want to point, a lot of work that's going on transitions. You know, the NDCs that everyone's going to agree to, ultimately they have to happen in a specific country, in a specific institutional setup. And we are focused on how that transition between these different tensions will take place in specific countries. Our work is very focused on in that country what it'll look like. So only thing I want to say is thank you for your question, because the outcome is not just decarbonizing the world or even saving the forest. I think we have to save the forest. It's actually how people can be better off, and while we do the other two things. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Just to further comment, I wasn't sure exactly what your first question was, but I know you were getting at the connection between natural resources and conflict and climate change. And I think, you know, we're very aware, of course, that climate change can precipitate conflict in Sudan. You know, precisely. I mean, there was a lot of migration to find the water that was in short supply, which, you know, precipitated fights over land. It can also be an opportunity, an advanced warning system, and an opportunity to try to forge sharing, you know, natural resource governance and sharing agreements to ensure that scarce resources are better managed. So that's what we're trying to think about at USAID, is where are the opportunities to get ahead of forthcoming natural resource challenges. And yeah, I think it's been said, but you know, this only works if it's tethered to the reality on the ground, and if we are consistently mindful of the very delicate balance between human and you know, and environmental ecosystems. And I think the reason we find ourselves in the place we are now is that that balance has just been so far off for so long. So obviously at AID, we're critically concerned about poverty and about ensuring communities can survive and thrive, and we need to enable them to do that in a way that is sustainable. So thank you so much to all of the tremendous partners. I'm bringing it home to all of the partners that are going to work with us. You know, we are building the low emissions bicycle as we ride it. So we welcome additional collaborators, but we're really, really excited to be supporting this project, and really excited to see what's to come. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.